So, folks, New York State is experiencing populations leaving for the state of Florida, serious economic problems, serious crime problems. Naturally, that means the governor is focused in like a laser beam on slavery reparations. Yesterday, Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, she says that the state should actually consider slavery reparations in New York, which was, as you may recall, not a slave state. She says that slavery reparations should actually be considered right now because New York obviously has tons of money to spend on this sort of issue amidst their serious crime problem, economic turmoil, people leaving the state because of the high taxes. Between her and Gavin Newsom, my goodness, the Democrats have a bench.
We're proud to be home of courageous leaders like Harriet Tubman, conductor of the Underground Railroad buried up in Auburn, New York, to Joyner Truth, Frederick Douglass, and abolitionists like John Brown, whose farm is way in the North Country. We're proud to embrace the deliverance from slavery from the Underground Railroad itself, which ran from New York all the way to Canada, crossing over in Niagara Falls, where I was yesterday. And that had the strong support of many much goodwill from residents of this state. So it's easy for us to pat ourselves on the back, right? We did all this. A lot of other states didn't step up. We had the leaders here. We took this on. We can say we're the heroes. We're the ones who fought against slavery. And indeed, many did. What is hard to embrace is the fact that our state also flourished from that slavery. In a few minutes, I'll sign a bill authorizing the creation of a community commission to study the history of slavery in New York State. We'll study various forms of reparations and how we can help right the wrongs of the past.
It's obviously pandering. It's obviously pandering. They can study any commission they want. But the reality is that slavery reparations is completely unworkable as a matter of law. How exactly do you discriminate on the basis of race? How do you trace back the ancestry? I mean, all of these practical questions have been serious. Who pays? Did people who arrived in like 1980 pay descendants of American slaves? How about black Americans who arrived in like 1980? How about Haitian Americans? Do they pay? Exactly. Who pays? Exactly. Who are the beneficiaries? All of this is not meant to actually create any sort of solutions. It is meant to exacerbate the problems and exacerbate the divisions. I want to talk to you about Daily Wire's most trusted privacy partner and a premier sponsor of this show, ExpressVPN. Using the internet without ExpressVPN, that's like checking your baggage at the airport without a lock. You think your stuff is safe, but you're not sure who's going through your belongings. When you go online without a VPN, ISPs can see every single website you visit. They can legally sell that information without your consent to ad companies and tech giants who then use that data to target you. But when you use ExpressVPN, internet service providers can no longer see that online activity. It is anonymized. Your data is encrypted for maximum protection. I love ExpressVPN because of how easy it is to use. You just fire up that app and you click one button. It works on all your devices, phones, laptops, even routers, so everyone who shares your Wi-Fi can be protected. Secure your online activity by visiting expressvpn.com/Ben today. That's expressvpn.com/Ben. You get an extra 3 months for free. expressvpn.com/Ben. Once more, expressvpn.com/Ben. It's how I protect my data. You should do the exact same thing. According to the New York Times, a federal judge on Tuesday cleared the way for the removal of a Confederate memorial from Arlington National Cemetery just one day after a temporary restraining order had halted the plan to move one of the most prominent monuments to the Confederacy from the nation's most famous burial ground. The memorial has been criticized for its sanitized depiction of slavery, and its removal is part of a military-wide effort to take down Confederate symbols from bases, ships, and other facilities. Now, why exactly is this happening? It's not happening because you wish to actually solve the problems of the Civil War. That's not why. Because, again, the reason that these memorials were erected was to effect some sort of reconciliation in the United States post-Civil War, a delicate balancing act that was, in part, the result of things like the 14th Amendment, which we've been discussing earlier in the show. It turns out that when you want to keep a country, you're going to have to require some sort of reconciliation. And monuments like this were an attempt to do that. It wasn't meant to, quote unquote, obscure slavery. That's not the idea here. The idea here is that when you have one half of the country fighting the other half of the country, the only way you're going to end up as one country after all of that is to create some sort of mercy for the losing side. That's what this monument was about. That's why it was uncontroversial for a very long time. So the question is, why is it controversial in 2023 when it was uncontroversial in, say, 1870, when, people were watching monuments like this be erected? And their family members have been killed by members of the Confederacy. Now, your brother just got shot by a member of the Confederacy 5 years ago, and now they're erecting a monument at Arlington National. Why were you okay with it? Because people understood that the only way to actually make the country one again was to effectuate this sort of reconciliation. And now you have people who are not involved in, who have not been slaves. Their parents were not slaves. Their grandparents were not slaves. You have people who have no relatives whatsoever who were involved in the Civil War. And you have all of these people who are now coming forth and saying that this memorial offends them now, which is about creating conflict in the now, obviously. That is the goal. It's not about teaching. In fact, these monuments, as I've said many, many times, they provide an opportunity for teaching. Yeah, they provide you an opportunity to actually have the discussion about what was the Confederacy? Why was the Confederacy so wrong? Why was slavery so evil? And then why was this monument built in the first place? Like, these are good, complex, nuanced, interesting conversations. You know, it's not an interesting conversation. Wiping away history in order so that you can claim that the problems of 1860 are the same as the problems of 2023, which is really the claim of the people who want to rip down monuments like this. That is really the goal here. Allison Parker, a historian at the University of Delaware, said these types of monuments, which were put up in the early 20th century, so again, there are people who are still living who had relatives killed in the Civil War, were about a certain kind of reification of a nostalgia based on the notion slavery wasn't really that bad. There's a misconception about the notion these monuments need to be preserved as a representation. In some cases, I think it's okay to take down these kind of monuments because they still carry hurtful meanings today. Such absolute tripe. This does not make things better in any way, shape, or form. There's no evidence that it does at all. Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.